Oh, hello everyone. Some very bright lights up here. Welcome to the pre-lunch slot, the best slot, right, at any conference. Welcome. My name is Jennifer Crook, and I'm the Director of Collective Act. And Anil, if you just want to introduce yourself, just check we can hear you.
Hi, good morning from Brooklyn. I hope you can hear me over there. Excellent.
Quite a view behind him, much better than my view.
Good view.
Dreamachine, you've heard a bit about it today, and I'll tell you a bit about kind of the overall program, and then we're going to dive into some of the context on the research. Dreamachine is an interdisciplinary program bringing together art, science, and technology in a completely new way. It's a collaboration between a team of Turner Prize-winning architects from Assemble, Grammy-nominated composer Jon Hopkins, scientists and philosophers from the University of Glasgow and the University of Sussex, and a team of technologists and creatives and sound designers, and Dev Joshi, who you heard from earlier, is somewhere in the audience. There he is, wave your hand, here with me today. So at the heart of the Dreamachine program is the live experience. Now, this is an artwork that you experience with your eyes closed, and it was inspired by a 1959 invention by beat artist Brion Gysin, and he created what was essentially a flickering light device that you look at with your eyes closed and experience this world of colors and patterns and shapes, all generated by your own brain. Now, this was a very small kind of rudimentary device, and we have scaled this up into a really large-scale collective experience, which we toured across the UK this summer. Now, when you enter the Dreamachine, which looks a little bit like a spaceship in this photo, you are really invited to leave the outside world behind. So it really is this kind of place of suspension for you to go deep into yourself, connect to yourself. You sit in the round, so you're in a group of around 32 other people. You shut your eyes and the experience will begin, and you really are immersed in this bath of light and sound. And what this generates behind your closed eyes is the most technicolor light show that you can imagine, and we'll hear a bit more about that later, which is all generated by your own brain and completely unique to you. And how this works is still a phenomena that is a mystery to scientists, which Anil may touch on later. Now, as I said, we toured this across the UK. We actually brought it to Cardiff, down the road, to the Temple of Peace, and I think we've got some of our Cardiff partners here, so hello. I can't see you right now, but I think you're in the room. And we took it to a market, a temple, a church, and an ice rink. And so in every one of those locations, it really embodied the sense of place that came with those buildings. It was a sellout tour. We had tens of thousands of people experience this across the UK this summer, and every single one of those people came out having a really extraordinary experience, and some of the reflections that we'll touch on later are super profound, not only just for those individuals that went through it, but also what we've learned from that about the nature of the brain and the nature of human consciousness through this kind of very, very simple magic trick, really. It unlocks all of these profound questions. Now, alongside the live experience, we have a schools program, and this was developed by A New Direction in partnership with the British Science Association, UNICEF, and We the Curious in Bristol. And this fuses arts with sciences, a lot like the rest of our program, and really kind of unpacks the themes and possibilities explored through the Dreamachine, like the power of the mind, our sense of self, how we connect to ourselves, and how we connect to each other and our place in the wider world. We created over 30 accredited lesson plans across science, citizenship, and health and well-being. These have been downloaded over 80,000 times, so they are out there in the world, in the classroom. And we also developed, alongside this, a children's survey into life's big questions. This is one of my favorite things about the schools program, because what we found through this is that children are the world's most natural philosophers, actually, and the questions that they were provoked into asking in their classrooms and at home over the summer were, I guess, as profound as some of the research questions that Anil and his team have spent the last 20, 30 years exploring. So really brilliant to see that coming down to children aged 7 and over. And then the third pillar of our program is the perception census, which we're going to focus on today. So this is one of the largest research projects of its kind in the world. It's led by world-leading academics, Anil, who will talk to us later, and Professor Fiona McPherson from the University of Glasgow. And this really is a groundbreaking project, which is kind of an unusual thing to say about a survey, but we're going to talk to you more about why this is. You know, the platform itself was built by an interdisciplinary team. So we had neuroscientists and philosophers working with animators and coders and technologists to build this platform to bring it to life. And what that's resulted in is something that is not only really robust and rigorous science, but also something that's really beautiful and really enjoyable to take part in. It's the first major study to look at all aspects of perception in the round. So we're not just focusing on visual perception, we're also looking at how we experience sound and music, our sense of self, how we connect to the world and our place in the world, and our beliefs about the world, which can vary enormously, and there isn't really one survey that's looked at this in the round. You can take part anywhere in the world, and later I'll tell you where people are taking part, which is also extraordinary. And through this, we're attempting to map something which is completely invisible, which is the way that our minds are all completely unique, but also the things that bring us together and connect us. So these are some questions which have baffled us in our team and have baffled scientists and philosophers for centuries. And Anil, I'm going to pass to you now to talk a bit more about what you can do on the platform.
Great, thanks, Jen. Thanks for that overview. Yeah, it's been just an enormous privilege to be part of this Dreamachine project. I've been involved with a lot of art science projects in my career, but by a million miles, this has been the deepest and the most productive. It's just the art science, the technology have come together at all levels. And so, yeah, we're focusing on the perception census today. It's the part of the project that's still going. And I mean, the thing about the perception census is that it capitalizes on something that became very apparent in the Dreamachine, which is that indeed that everybody has a very powerful, very vivid, but very different experience. But of course, this is going on all the time in everyday life too. You open your eyes, you see the sky. Do you all have the same experience of the same color of the sky? Almost certainly not. We have this inner perceptual diversity. But it hasn't really been measured systematically. Psychologists and neuroscientists tend to study one little thing at a time and maybe look at differences in how people hear things or differences in how people see things. But with the census, this is like in the background, by the way, you're seeing the intro video that explains more about it with my voiceover. But since I'm speaking, we cut my voiceover. There are 10 different sections that people can take part in. So we're covering all different aspects of perception rather than just one or two. And we've chosen little experiments and interactive illusions and surveys that are well suited for characterizing this hidden diversity in how we each experience a unique world. And what's also, I think, really powerful about it is it's not just a one-way data gathering process. And we've been careful about this through the whole of Dreamachine, that it's not ever feeling like a scientific study or an experiment on people. It's an experience for people. That's true of the Dreamachine, and that's also true of this, because by taking part, people will learn more about perception. They'll be able to sort of develop and feed this curiosity about the mind and the brain, and they'll also learn more about how their way of perceiving the world and themselves relates to others. And I think this is going to provide a huge amount of fascinating data, but it also has a sort of wider social message, which is that it really reveals to each of us that the way we see the world is not necessarily the way it is. And by cultivating this kind of humility about our perceptual experience, I think we do a very useful thing to society in general. It's very easy to sort of think, yeah, that's the way I see things, because that's how it seems. It seems like I see things exactly as they are. But having this deep recognition that there's differences among all of us, I think that almost feeds through into us about the world too. It enables us, gives us platforms for connection and empathy, simply by realizing that the way we see things is unique to us, as the novelist Anil said. We don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. Can I have the next slide, please, Jen? So this is the Perception Census website. So again, I've worked in universities for decades, and we never design things that look very nice when you take part in them. One of the joys of this has been working with this wider team to make the experience as fluid and as actually just beautiful as possible for people. So this is the website. People click on it, they can look at all these different topics that they might want to explore from our colourful world, digging deeper into perception, I can't read, it's too small on my screen, great expectations and so on. That's how the brain's expectations affect what we experience. So 10 quite disparate topics, but all triangulating our perceptual experience in different ways. Then people can start with one section. We encourage everybody to do this fundamentals of perception first, which covers basically the basis, because not everybody is going to do all of it. People can do part of it, they can come back at other times. Each section takes a maximum of about 20 to 25 minutes. to do. And there's 10 sections, so it's a big ask for somebody to do all of it, especially all at once. But people will go away, come back, and pick the sections they're interested in. There's also this Ask the Experts option at the bottom. So here's where people can ask questions about perception, about the mind, about the brain, about consciousness. And the scientific and philosophical team are on hand to answer those questions in a very interactive way. And so this last image here is just what happens when you actually click on a topic, and there's a little intro bit of audio, and then the stuff starts. And we won't show you the actual experiments because you'll have to do it for yourself. Here are all the sections again that we've developed. It's actually been, in my experience, and this has been such an intensive process to develop these studies. It's, again, most labs would only do 1 or 2 of these things. We've done 10, and it really does build directly out of the Dreamachine experience. People come out of Dreamachine excited to learn more about the mind and the brain, and with the perception census, it's one way of taking it further. So next slide, please. These are just some of the questions that we can answer as scientists and philosophers in the project. We can ask things like, how is our sense of time linked to what we see? We experience time. It's not because we've got a clock in our head. Our brain creates the experience of time passing in ways which also are not completely understood. And we can shed more light on individual variants in that now, and how it's linked to other senses. We can ask about associations between colors and emotions, and how stable and consistent they are, whether they vary in different parts of the country. And we also ask questions about people's beliefs about consciousness too. There's a lot of differing beliefs about what consciousness is, what the mind is, and we can survey these sorts of attitudes also. But what this really allows us to do for the first time is draw connections among all of these different areas in a way that's never been done before. So next slide, please. This is just a return to the Ask the Experts forum, which I think as the project goes on is going to become a more and more rich venue. We've already had a whole bunch of questions come in from all parts of the country and abroad as well. And people can they'll suggest the questions, we'll look at them, and then we'll sort of answer them in some sort of priority order. But this, I think, is going to provide a lasting resource and legacy of public engagement about these issues. I think, is it back to you, Jen, or is it still me?
Still you.
It's still me.
Seamless.
Good. All right. Very seamless, very well practiced this. So a study like this depends on reach and engagement. If we don't get large numbers of people taking part, we won't be able to say very much in the end. But because of the connection with the main Dreamachine, we are getting lots of people, and we already have about 7,000, more than 7,000 people have completed the first section, the fundamentals of perception. And that was launched in July. We only launched the last section quite recently. We were doing it in stages because it takes a while to develop. So this is where we're at already. And we've got, as you can see, quite a wide range of ages, which is also, for me, this is super important because there's this kind of dirty secret here that most of the things you read in research about psychology, the result of doing experiments on undergraduate psychology students, which is probably not representative of the whole population. But here we've got people of all ages and a good gender balance as well, engaging with the study. But we're really trying to push this and hoping to get up to 10, well, way beyond 10 towards 20,000. And that, I think, will give us a totally unique scientific and philosophical resource that is going to spark a lot of projects as follow-ups. We've already had lots of interest. For instance, a psychologist in London has worked with 3,000 pairs of twins, 30 years. And so now we have the opportunity to understand the genetic basis of differences in how we experience the world, because we can get his twins from his study to engage with the perception census. And there's lots of different impacts. So there's the research impact, there's the education impact, that this is a way of kindling and satisfying people's curiosity about the mind, the brain, and how they see the world. Well-being is an impact as well. And think this is back to you, Jen, because this applies to the whole of Dreamachine, not just the perception census.
Yeah, so I think something that you've talked a lot about very eloquently, Anil, is this concept of neurodiversity. And, we're becoming more familiar with that term, but also there is the term of perceptual diversity, which we are all on a scale on. And, we're very used to making analyses in the medical kind of profession and putting labels on things and that helping be a way that we understand each other. But, there is so much more nuance and complexity to the way that we live our lives and who we are as people and who we interact with and how we interact with that tells us, I guess, a greater story of why we're in the world and why we do what we do in the world. And so, this is shining a light on something which is otherwise quite invisible. It's quite hard to put your finger on. And I think actually just looking at some of the pickup we've had in the media, this really, really interests me. So, The Guardian, New Statesman, BBC, New Scientist have all covered this and are still covering it in some depth. So these articles are, really long-form think pieces. And if you just look at a couple of the subheadings here, so, every human brain is different. It's time to appreciate the diversity of our experiences. Or the New Statesman saying, we don't all see reality in the same way, and that is a good thing. Who is right and who is wrong? If we can't all agree on what colour something is, then, what does that tell us about how differently we're all seeing the world, and what can that help by understanding that? So it's something that, I think has real value and interest way outside of the realms of a laboratory or even kind of medical analysis, and is something that is just very important to how we live our lives. Anil, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, because obviously neurodiversity which is coming up a lot in your current conversation.
Yeah, I do actually. Thanks for prompting me about that, because it's something that's an idea that's really been developing through the execution of this project, that there has been, over the last 10 or 20 years, increasing attention paid to this concept of neurodiversity. And I think for very good reason. Neurodiversity is usually associated with specific conditions, maybe things like autism or ADHD. And the people who talk within the neurodiversity community, there is a valuable emphasis saying that differences are not deficits, they are only differences. I think this is very valuable, but the challenge and the problem has been that because neurodiverse individuals tend to be associated with particular conditions, neurodiversity has been nonetheless a little pathologized as a term. And what it does, it also, in the way it's been understood in the wider culture, it sort of reinforced the idea that there is neurodiversity, but the rest of us see the world in a neurotypical way, as it is. So there's a normative, veridical, neurotypical way, and then there's neurodiverse things, which are just differences, not deficits, but all the same. There's the right way, and there are other ways. And this is why I'm really keen to push this new idea of perceptual diversity, because it's about this middle bit. Most of the differences in the way we experience things, be it whether the world or the body or the self, will be relatively subtle and won't surface into our language or our behavior. We'll still use the same words. This is what allows us to get on in daily life. Our perceptual experiences are similar enough that it's easy to believe that we all do experience the world in the same way as it is, but we don't. And I think getting that message across and actually getting the hard data to support this idea, which is what we're doing with the census, will have a huge, potentially huge impact by just making very clear the notion that everybody is different. We all inhabit a unique perceptual world, and that should give us greater empathy and understanding, not only for each other, but also for the wider range of perceptual experience that we see in neurodiversity and neurodiverse conditions.
And it's really interesting to see as well, I don't know if you've observed this, Anil, that it seems like younger generations are really actually engaging with this topic. And it seems to be now that sometimes that awareness of those definitions is actually empowering people, and rather than it being something which is a label that puts you in a box, it's something that you can celebrate. So just looking at some of the feedback from participants in this, I love this one, which was, considering the themes it covers, I honestly wish this was as mandatory as our actual census. Maybe one day we'll reach those heady heights. And also someone who discovered they had synesthesia just by taking part in the census. So, already some really beautiful feedback coming through. We've actually had, as of today, nearly 10,000 people taking part in this, so it's rising every single day. And over 100 countries, the only continent that has not taken part in this so far is Antarctica. So if anyone knows anyone who could get someone to take part, that'd be fantastic. So USA and in Canada, Australia, India, Japan, New Zealand, Mexico, Brazil, Singapore, South Africa, and all across Europe. So again, Anil, I think for you and your team, the sheer range of that research and the data that that will give you is really unprecedented, and it's super exciting to hear that there are researchers from different parts of the world also taking a look at this and seeing how they might collaborate with us on it. I thought it might be interesting now to bring it back to the experiences that people are having in the Dreamachine themselves, and so we can kind of see how these things fit together.
If you want to see color,
Volume.
you must come see this. This is vivid, Panasonic vivid color.
Definitely can't understand if it's silent.
I was able to fully be in my head and see what my mind was producing, as opposed to just watching something external, having it happen to me. I felt like I'm part of this creation. It felt amazing.
It does make you think in a certain way. I don't think you can leave unchanged or uncurious.
Sorry, missed the first one. So these were all filmed in the reflection area at the Dreamachine. So this is the bit of the experience which for me is really the heart of what we're doing. So when you come out of this extraordinary kaleidoscopic world that was all generated by you, it's that moment where the doors open and you can look to the people next to you and go, what the hell just happened? What did you see? Was that real? Where did you go? Just what the hell? Lots of questions. You know, this table, which sits at the heart of the reflection space in each of the Dreamachine locations, is really a place for people to connect. I cannot tell you how popular the drawing has been. So we have something like 20,000 drawings which were produced at that table by the participants in this experience. And, you know, they were a point of reflection, and I guess a way that people could start to put something tangible around a very intangible experience that they've got no way otherwise of showing or discussing with those around them. But also they're forming an incredible archive of what it is that people have seen in the Dreamachine. And if I just show you here, this is a tiny snapshot of those 20,000 drawings. And if you actually go onto dreamachine.world, you can explore these and you can search them by location and by date, and you can find yours and share it if you took part in it. And you can see just from this collection here that they're obviously all completely individual drawings and they all tell a story about that person's experience. But you can also start to see patterns emerging. So we're seeing lots of spirals and geometry and eyes and kind of that sense of travel or tunneling. So again, Anil, I think it's probably too early for you to have reflected on this because it's an enormous amount of feedback that we've received, but there is something really of research value in the different types of experience that people have had. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I just say, I mean, this is phenomenal. I didn't expect people. We designed this sort of sensory tool tablet as well, which is providing us more systematic data, which is going to be great. But just the level of engagement with the drawing, which was totally blew me away. And it is suggestive. So one of the theories that I'm working on with the scientific team about what actually happens in the Dreamachine is very basically that the brain is looking at itself. Your eyes are closed, but the light is still activating the visual parts of your brain. So it's trying to make sense of this unstructured input. And the only thing that gives the input structure is the brain itself. So this is like a working hypothesis that these images are partly the result of the brain's intrinsic structure appearing, surfacing into conscious experience. And actually, we can use drawings like this to test that hypothesis because we can generate computational models of what it might be like for the brain to look at itself. Because we know a lot about how the brain is wired. So that's an ongoing project. Like we have, in my lab, we've got two new PhD students starting now who are going to, for the next 3 years, be working on this rich body of scientific philosophical work generated by the Dreamachine and the perception census.
So again, it's back to this theme of helping to map and make visible something which is otherwise invisible, but which is controlling a lot of our lives. You know, it's a huge factor in our lives, our consciousness. We wouldn't be much without it. So it's an amazing tool, I guess, to look at something from a completely different angle. So again, back to some more of the feedback that we've had from our visitors. And you can start to see how the parallels between the census and the Dreamachine experience are kind of coming together here. So I love this one, that I was struck in the moment that the curiosity and drive into understanding the mysteries of the outer universe seem to run parallel to understanding our own minds and inner worlds. So really this kind of marrying of the infinite, of what's possible, mixed with what's within you and what's contained within you, and the kind of power that sits between those two things. Anil, you had a really nice line in your Guardian article, which was, there isn't just one beautiful world out there, there are many, and I think Dreamachine is kind of really celebrating that. I'm going to end on a very quick quote, so if you can have the sound ready, that would be really great, from one of our participants, who I think put it better than any of us can.
Having the ability, like Dreamachine accessing that part in your brain, which is just like, this is what your subconscious is thinking about, like without you even knowing. It's just like, our brains are powerful. They are very powerful things. I would consider it a life-changing thing to go through, 100%.
So our very last slide, please take part. There's the web link. Thank you very much.
There's also a book.